Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be taking a look at BT9, and BT9 offers us lots of new and powerful tools to build and iterate on some new and existing decks. And today's deck I'm going to be taking a look at is going to be a brand new iteration on D-Reapers. So D-Reapers is a deck that, even though BT9 isn't giving it any direct support, still gets cards that we could think about adopting it in new and different ways to make D-Reapers even stronger than it was before. So D-Reapers is still going to be playing that same type of gameplay where you're just going to try to build up your stack on your Mother Reaper to just end the game as efficiently as you possibly can, going into a Reaper finish. And there's just a whole bunch of different sub-packages that you could think about including to better support either the stall aspect of what the deck is trying to do, or trying to support the aggro aspect of what the deck is trying to do. But with all that said and done, let's just get into the deck profile. Starting off with the Digitama, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Mother Reaper as, well, the only Digitama we need. Mother Reaper is still just a really good card because she's just super hard to interact with when we move her out of the raising area, just because she has the All-Turns ability where this Digimon can't attack, but it can't be affected by the opponent's card effects. So absolutely nothing can touch Mother D-Reaper except for the opponent trying to attack into our Mother D-Reaper, which is going to be easier said than done for a lot of different decks. So it just makes Mother Reaper just a card to sit on the field, and we could use that in various different ways to be able to do different types of things depending on your sub-package. Then she has a nice main ability where once per turn, if we don't have another Mother D-Reaper in play, which you shouldn't, you should always have one on the field and one in raising, we get to place one ADR2 Searcher from either in play or our hand to the bottom of this Digimon's Digivolution source. So once per turn, she herself is just allowing us to shove our Searchers underneath to help build her stack. Then during your turn once per turn, when you would play a card with a D-Reaper in its traits from our hand, we get to reduce its play cost by 1 for each of this Digimon's Digivolution source. So once per turn, we get to just make playing one of our D-Reapers a little bit more efficient, which is pretty good because some of them have some pretty decently high play costs. Next, I'm going to be running 18 copies of ADR02 Searcher. So Searcher has this ability where we could run up to 50 copies of this card in our deck, so we want to see this card as often as we possibly can because it's going to be the main engine card of our deck to help accelerate our game plan. So obviously we know that Mother wants to shove them underneath her for their inheritable ability, where during your turn, all of your Digimon with D-Reaper in its traits gets a plus 1000 DP to make our D-Reapers a little bit more aggressive. And the more Searchers we have, the more powerful our D-Reapers become. Then on top of that, the whole reason why we want to use this card is the draw aspect of this card, where on play we get to draw 1 card. So we want to play every single turn because we're not necessarily digivolving. Then on top of that, it has another ability where unfortunately during your turn this Digimon can't attack players, but this Digimon can still attack Digimon, so it's a really good card at picking off the opponent's suspended rookies, then shoving it under your Mother. And we want to try to play this card as often as we possibly can because it also reduces its own play cost, because if you don't have another ADR02 Searcher in play, then we get to reduce the play cost by 2. So we could play 1 for 1, tuck it under our Mother, then play another 1 for 1, which is just really good just because we're not investing a whole lot in being able to draw cards and add sources underneath our Mother. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of ADR03 Pendulum Feat. So Pendulum Feat is going to be the deck's dedicated digger, where it has the on-play ability where we get to reveal the top 3 cards of our deck, add 1 card with D-Reaper in its traits, and 1 with ADR02 Searcher from among them into our hand, and then the rest go to the bottom. So this card is just another draw or searching tool for the deck to adopt, because we definitely need to see our cards in order to play the game, and because we're not digivolving, we need all of the draw power that we could get. Next up, I'm going to be running 4 copies of ADR04 Bubbles. So Bubbles is in the deck to try to help accelerate our game plan, just because the security ability and on-play ability are doing basically the same thing, where we get to place 1 ADR2 Searcher from either our hand or in play underneath our mother to the bottom of its Digivolution source. So even though the security ability doesn't play the Digimon, it's still the fact that it's helping accelerate our game plan, whether it's coming from our hand or our security is the whole point, and we have different ways in different colors to be able to abuse this card, namely yellow with a Tactical Retreat to help shove it into our security to guarantee that security ability. Next, I'm going to be running 3 copies of ADR01 Jerry. So ADR01 Jerry is another card to help accelerate our Mother D-Reaper's inheritable sources to try to end the game as quickly as we possibly can. So her ability states that we get to suspend this Digimon to reveal the top 5 cards of our deck and place a searcher from among them underneath one of our Mother D-Reaper to the bottom of its Digivolution source, and then the remaining cards go to the bottom. So even though it's not adding it directly into our hand or putting it onto the field, just the fact that we have alternative ways to increase our Mother D-Reaper's inheritable sources to help accelerate her game plan is the whole point. Next up, I'm going to be running 4 copies of ADR09 Gatekeeper. So Gatekeeper is one of the best cards in the entire deck just because of how powerful its abilities are at trying to control the field and shut off the opponent's Digimon. So it is another security Digimon for us to abuse with a card like Tactical Retreat to try to have on the field, shove it back, so that way we're guaranteed its security ability, or almost guaranteed its security ability. Then its on-play ability states that as long as we have a Mother D-Reaper in play, then we get to recover 1, which is something the yellow side already kind of wants to do anyway, just because yellow is partially about recovery. So that way, not only do we have a good security threat, the fact that it recovers us helps us keep in the game a little bit longer. Then on top of that, the reason why we want to have this card sit on the field is because during the opponent's turn, while you have a Mother D-Reaper with 6 or more Digivolution sources in it in play, then all of your opponent's Digimon gain Security Attack -1 to try to make things harder on the opponent to be able to aggress onto us, just because their Digimon effectively won't be able to deal damage unless they're super boosted. And the more Gatekeepers we have on the field, the more this ability does stack per Gatekeeper, so you could just try to shut out the opponent just with the Gatekeepers to have this ultimate stall tactic. And the reason why we're trying to stall is so that way we could try to be able to play our Reaper, and when we play our Reaper, usually is when we're going to win the game. So Reaper is going to be our win condition, and as a result, I'm going to be running 3 copies of him. What's making Reaper so good is the fact that he gets to set his play cost to 0 just by us trashing 7 inheritable sources off of our Mother D-Reaper. Then he has the rush ability to be able to attack the turn that we play him, and he has a nice when attacking ability where we get to place 2 ADR02 searchers from our trash underneath this Digimon's Digivolution source in any order to be able to unsuspend himself. So the more searchers we have in trash, the more attacks we could possibly get off, and we're going to also try chipping the opponent's security with our Palladium Feet and our Bubbles to be able to try to end the game with Reaper the best that we possibly can. And then the last Digimon of the deck is going to be 2 copies of Dexmon. So Dexmon is just an absolute insanely powerful card for virtually any deck to use, especially D-Reapers. So what he's doing for D-Reapers is the fact that we're not really trying to interact with the opponent's field that much. Don't get me wrong, we still are, but we don't necessarily want or need removal because of what this card is doing. So he gets to reduce his play cost by 3 for every Digimon and Tamer that the opponent has in play. So he's just making himself cheaper to hard play, which is what we're going to have to do in D-Reapers. Then for hard playing him, we get a D-Digivolve 1 on all of the opponent's Digimon, and then we get to delete all of the opponent's Digimon that's level 4 or lower, which is pretty good, acting as a pseudo board wipe in case the opponent is trying to flood us out, which we could stall them out with Gatekeeper's ability. Then on top of that, he has an extra ability where at the end of the opponent's turn, once per turn, we get to delete all of the opponent's Digimon with the lowest play cost. So he's just also adding as a continual removal for when he's out on the field. And then next on to the options, I'm going to be running 2 copies of X Antibody. So X Antibody is actually acting as a pretty decent security threat where we get to gain 1 memory and add this card into our hand. So we could try to anti-tempo the opponent, but outside of that, we're doing absolutely nothing outside of utilizing this card to add an extra source under our Mother D-Reaper to help accelerate her game plan. So that's the whole intended use of this card. and we don't care about any of its other abilities outside of its security ability and putting it under our mother. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Tactical Retreat. So Tactical Retreat is just a card to combo with our security Digimon. So this is only really going to be interacting with our Bubbles and our Gatekeeper are its primary targets, just because we get to take a Digimon on our field and put it into our security stack face down, and then trash all of its Digivolution sources. Then it's also a good security threat just because it helps us recover 1 to try to stall out the game, so that way we could try to keep our security as healthy as we possibly can. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Spiral Masquerade. So Spiral Masquerade is kind of a flex spot. This could be various other yellow options if you wanted it to be, but I do still like Spiral Masquerade just because of the level of control that it could offer us, especially in the early to mid stages of the game. So what this card is doing is for each Digimon we have in play, we get to activate the following effect of reducing one of the opponent's Digimon's DP by 3,000 for the turn. So with our mother always being on the field, we're always going to be able to get 1 proc of this ability at worst, and with D-Reapers, us hard playing everything, we could build for a very powerful Masquerade if the opponent doesn't have the ability to interact with our field. But we do need some form of removal to try to get rid of large body threats the best that we possibly can. Then its security ability activates its main, acting as another security threat to try to help control and mitigate the opponent's field. And then the last option of the deck is going to be 1 copy of Reinforced Memory Boost, just because it's still that good of a card to use in virtually any deck that can run yellow. So what this card is doing is it allows us to reveal the top 2 cards of our deck. One of them goes into the top of our security stack face down, and then the other goes into our hand. So we could try to line up our security Digimon and security threats utilizing Reinforced Memory Boost, while we're also adding cards into our hand, so it's basically like a Holy Wave on steroids. Then on top of that, it goes into the battle area after it's done for its delay ability to help us gain some instant memory at a later turn, and this compared to the other memory boost gains us 3 memory instead of 2, making it just a lot of extra tempo that we could gain out of nowhere. Then its security ability at worst just sets it into the battle area, so we could use the delay ability at a later turn. And then the last card of the deck is going to be the only tamer of the deck, and that's going to be 3 copies of Kari Kamiya. So Kari Kamiya is going to be our main yellow source we want to have sit on our field, so that way we could actually use our yellow options. And she also has some pretty decent synergy with the deck. So she is going to also act as our memory fixing tamer, so if our memory is ever less than 3, she'll just hard set us 3, which is pretty good, allowing us to make our Digimon plays a little bit more efficient. Then on top of that, the synergy that she has is with the whole recovery aspect we're trying to lean into, where when a card is added to our security stack, so whether it's through recovery, tactical retreat, or reinforced memory boost, it doesn't matter as long as cards are being added, then we get to suspend this tamer to gain 1 memory, which could help make the cost of those cards a little bit more palatable because some of them are a little on the expensive side. And this does stack, so the more Karis that we have on the field, the more instance of this ability that we have to make our cards even more efficient. And then there's still just a whole bunch of room for different tech and tools that we can incorporate into the deck to really customize it and make it your own, depending, again, if you want to lean more into the aggressive side of what the deck can do, or more of the defensive side of what the deck can do. So we do have a whole bunch of other D-Reapers that we could think about trying to include, again, all depending on the different aspects on how the deck is trying to play. I think the best alternative D-Reaper that's not in the main deck is going to be Pallades Head for some extra removal, but the others kind of have their own niche uses depending on how you build the deck. Then we do just have a whole bunch of other different Digimon that we could hard play to gain some various benefits. So I think Marine Angemon and Starmons are 2 of the best Digimon with on-play effects that we could try to take advantage of, especially adding extra yellow sources into the deck to be able to use our yellow options. Then we do have some various other option cards that we could run, again, doubling down on your different colors. So in yellow, we could run Holy Wave just for some more recovery. Then we also could run Eden's Javelin for some more draw and control. And we even have Wyvern's Breath as like the yellow version of Gaia Force for large body removal. Then as far as alternative tamers go for yellow, we could think about utilizing TK and Kari as a duo tamer to gain some extra memory for us being at a lower security than the opponent, which isn't necessarily impossible. And if we want to think about running a 2-color tamer, then we have Tai and Kari that also allows us to run red cards as well. And as long as we're chipping at the opponent's security and they try to chip at our security, then we could still gain a lot of additional memory off of this tamer. But if you want to go a little bit more traditionally into red, we do have some good red tamers that we could think about using, Hero being one of them, so that way we could interact with Hero and Dexmon. Or if you want something cheap and generic, even though it's not going to be helping us gain memory, we do have the starter deck Tai, just to blanketly give all of our Digimon plus 1000 DP to make them a little bit stronger. Then we do have some really interesting tech and tools that we could think about adopting into the deck. So we do have cards like Rowdy Rocker as some extra card draw. Rowdy Rocker does have a couple of good cards that we want to try to use this card in combination with to add it to the overall inheritable sources of our Mother D Reaper as well. And the best 2 sources that I can think of to add underneath our Mother D Reaper for some really good passive abilities is going to be the starter deck Guilmon for some extra card draw when we're deleting an opponent's Digimon. Or it's going to be the starter deck Growlmon to gain a memory when the opponent's Digimon is deleted. Then if you're running red, usually you're also going to try running a delicate plan to try to make your Reaper swings as safe as you possibly can, because the only downside to Reaper is if it does die in security, which a delicate plan kind of takes and removes that almost entirely. Then we do have some really good control tools in red that we could think about using in the form of Crimson Blaze and Gaia Force as 2 really good examples of that. But if you do want to run a different color, we do also have access to black because Dexmon also is part black to help make our black cards a little bit more playable. So we do have Breath of the Gods again to try to remove and eliminate as many threats that the opponent could have in their security. Then if you just want one of the best tools for the deck to use, we could use Final Zuba God Punch, again offensively or defensively, just because we could either give our Reaper, Dexmon, or Mother D Reaper Reboot, Blocker, and Security Attack Plus. Then black has its own set of removal option cards for us to take advantage of, Ultimate Flare being one of the better ones. And then black has access to another really good defensive tool in the form of Congo, trying to prevent the opponent's low-level Digimon from trying to chip us out, while also preventing the opponent from actually adding cards into their security. Then the black tamers we want to incorporate in the deck to actually be able to play the black cards outside of our Dexmon is going to be Izzy and Joe, just for some extra memory gain, even though we'll rarely get the card draw. And we also have Izzy as a good memory fixing tamer to set our memory to 3, and its on-play ability helps us rig the top cards of our deck, so that way we could try to utilize some of our abilities a little bit more efficiently, and to try to rig our card draws so that way we know what's going to be coming. But I think all of that just makes D-Reapers a really fun deck to be playing around with, just because of all of the different types of colors and packages that you could include in it. I still think that the best 3 colors to be playing with D-Reapers is either going to be yellow, red, or black, just because they are playing along with what D-Reapers is trying to do the best. And I think that D-Reapers is still just going to be a really strong deck, just because the core concept of comboing off with our Reaper and having some good tech and tools off of our Mother and our various D-Reapers is really, really good, and the more powerful on-play Digimon and options that we have can still be used to be able to increase the overall power and potential of what D-Reapers is trying to do, even though we currently aren't getting any more D-Reapers themselves. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and down in the description below are a couple of different ways you could support me and the channel. So I do have a TCG Player affiliate link, so when you use that link to buy cards off of TCG Player, then some of that money will go to supporting me and the channel. I also do make and sell playmats over on Overcard Gamers on Facebook, so when you buy a playmat with my design, then some of that money will also go to help supporting me and the channel. And on top of all of that, I do have a Twitch account over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, so giving me a follow and a subscription also helps support me there, and I do play Digimon on top of various other games on that platform as well. So thank you everyone for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.